Good morning to you from my car. Actually, I wanted to deliver this message out in the open this morning, but it's a little bit too breezy. I'm actually sitting in Carlton Marshes, which is where I often come just for a walk, when my foot's much better, of course, and just to enjoy the greenery of the place. Well, there hasn't been a lot of green lately because we haven't had very much rain, but I want you to take special note this morning of the thumbnail. Don't often make references to the thumbnails. They're actually quite important because they illustrate the message. And this morning's message particularly, you'll see on the thumbnail that it's a poster. And it's my local supermarket. I was actually going to stand outside and do it live from the poster, but it got a little bit too busy. But as you'll see on the poster, it says Plant Revolution. And slowly but surely, aren't we getting more and more conditioned to accept that the kind of food that we should be eating isn't the kind of food that we are used to eating? And slowly, bit by bit, we're getting more and more advertising thrown at us to eat the alternative way. And I was... well, I say a film was drawn to my attention. I haven't actually watched the film through. I've only seen clips, but I was looking at the plot and the story, and it's quite interesting. It was made in 1973. It's called Soylent Green. And if you listen to the way the title is spoken, you would think it's Soylent Green, you know, something more healthy. But it's Soylent Green. It was a mixture of soya and lentils. They put the word together, Soylent, and the plot was set in 2022, although the film was made in 1973, so we're coming up for the 50th anniversary of this film. Starred Charlton Heston in a dystopian world where there was no more food, and the oceans were dying, supposedly. Climate catastrophes were going on. There was overpopulation, there was pollution, and very much the things, of course, that are being spoken about today. And apparently there was an elite, just like there is now. And the elite, of course, didn't suffer the things that the rest of the populace did. And Soylent Green is basically the only food that's left on the planet. And it's supposedly, I say supposedly, made out of marine plankton. Now, because the oceans were dying, this so-called food was starting to also become scarce. The film is set in New York City, and you start to see the way that they've depicted the desperation of the people on this film. They need to eat, and of course there are riots, all sorts of protests, and people are rising up in anger. Well, as the film goes on, and as things get more and more difficult, there's a side story to this. There's an investigation of a murder, and a plot is uncovered. And the basis of the whole thing apparently is at the very end of the film, when they discover that Soylent Green, these wafers that were actually made for all the people to eat, supposedly from marine plankton, were actually made out of people. Apparently there's an exclamation at the end. I think it's Charlton Heston, where he stands up and he says, "This is of people. This food is people." And apparently it was people that were in prison, corpses, anything they could muster together to give to the people, to placate them. Soylent Green. What are we given today to eat? And we're told, aren't we, more and more, we need to get the earth greener and greener and greener. But you know and I know that it's green unto death. And of course, as you know, it gets my mind turning onto Scripture. And just before I do that, actually, I was looking at an interview yesterday, and they were talking about a couple of different foods. I've noticed that with McDonalds, you now get the Mac plant. My son was saying he tried one the other day, he found it revolting. We're being more and more conditioned. Apparently a way back there was something called Beyond Fried Chicken. And this was apparently also some sort of a soya product that was supposed to resemble Kentucky Fried Chicken. The packaging apparently was the same colour as the Soylent Green that was manufactured, if you have a look on the film. And it's interesting to note that all these foods that we're told are much better for us to eat are far higher in protein, far higher in sodium, far higher in salt, and actually are far more ruinous to our bodies than natural food. And it's interesting here because I want to go back to Genesis and just point two scriptures out to you here that I think are quite interesting. It's Genesis 1 verse 29. And of course God has created man, hasn't he? But man has to eat. It says here, and God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of the earth, the whole earth, and every tree, in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. I love the way the KJV puts that, actually. Our meat isn't meat, but it's herb-bearing seeds. Isn't that interesting? That was what God intended before the flood. But of course, God knew the end from the beginning, didn't he? He knew that that wasn't going to be enough, and that in the end man would fall. But when he did fall, the interesting thing is this: he brought in a different order. And if we go to Genesis 9, and I hadn't really noticed this scripture terribly much, Genesis 9, 1-3. Of course, Adam and Eve were before the flood, and that was what was happening. After the flood, God had a new order. Genesis 9, 1-3. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. Even as the green herb have I given you all things. Now just take a note of that there. God put the fear of man into these animals so that they could be caught, so that they could be eaten. This was God's new order on the earth. Yes, a fallen earth, but a remade earth in the sense that Noah, when he arrived after the flood, had to reset up things. There was a great reset, effectively, after Noah. And that reset gave us live food, gave us meat. And God was happy to give us meat in that instance, because he deliberately put that fear into the animals. And so, God has an intent. And he hasn't changed that order. This is the point I want to make this morning. God's order hasn't changed. Man wants to reverse it. Satan himself in man wants to reverse it. Wants to take you back to a false Eden. Back to a place where you only eat seeds and herbs. False food is what I call it. Satan wants you to eat the fake stuff because he wants to take you back to a false Eden. And of course, as we know, the whole point of this great so-called reset is all about taking you back to a place where they believe you're going to be healthier because you're going to be living green. You're going to be carbon free and all the rest of it. All the lies that are being spun, and even Christians are swallowing them today. The Church of England here apparently has access to trillions of pounds with regard to helping the planet, as they call it, saving the planet, making things more and more green. And these lies go on as we open ourselves up to these narratives. And there are many Christians that are opening themselves up to this global deception. The elite want you to eat bugs. They want you to eat insects. But in the film Soylent Green, the elite, they lived in high-rise penthouses, apparently. They lived well. They ate the meat. The Klaus Schwabs of this world, the Yuval Noah Hararis of this world, they're not going to be eating bugs and insects. They're going to be eating the best of the land. after they've got rid of all the populations they want to get rid of. Let's have a look at a couple more scriptures here. Galatians 5:15, and I'm only bringing this out from a spiritual sense because of all the arguments that this particular issue is raising in the apostate churches. How we need to get back to being green, we need to get back to being pure. And the arguments develop, don't they? Galatians 5:15. It's quite interesting here, of course. He's discussing the fruits of the Spirit and the law. He says here, "But if you bite and devour one another, take heed that ye be not consumed of one another." Consumed of one another spiritually. And of course, we know too, the power of cannibalism, the power of eating one another spiritually, spiritual cannibalism. And of course, people are going to become despairing, aren't they, if they can't get food? Can you imagine the situation where there's literally nothing to eat for the foreseeable future? The shelves are bare, a bit like when lockdown was on. Remember, you went in there and you saw bare shelves. Today, of course, we're seeing supply chains falling apart, aren't we? You can't get grain, you can't get oil, you can't get this, you can't get that. Deliberate collapse of the economy. Soylent Green coming to pass. It's coming to pass. They didn't make those movies for nothing in those days. Men had forward thinking. Some of them could see ahead. They didn't even know they could see ahead into the prophetic realm. And so, if we give way to the narratives in a small way with regard to eating green, doing this, doing that, making sure we don't eat too much meat because we might destroy the environmental balance of the planet. If we start listening to that stuff, we start turning our heads away from the true gospel and we start biting and devouring one another. No, we're called as Christians to do one thing, to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. The lies are going to get bigger and bigger. Yes, that's a fact. But for us, here's the commandment for us. And it's quite clear and it's never changed. Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and it's verse 7. I'll just read 2 or 3 verses here, maybe 7 to 9. "Go thy way, eat thy bread with joy, and drink thy wine with a merry heart. For God now accepteth thy works. Let thy garments be always white, and let thy head lack no ointment. Live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of the life of thy vanity, which he hath given thee under the sun. All the days of thy vanity, for that is thy portion in this life, and in thy labour, which thou takest under the sun." Yes, enjoy your life. Eat your bread. Eat it with joy. Eat the bread that's been given to you. The Dutch farmers are protesting. Their land is being expropriated for the globalist system. They want to take away the livestock farming. They want to tell the lie, the nitrate lie. Constantly we're going to be assailed more and more with this. But we have to stand strong. Our job is to enjoy what God has given us. Enjoy the order that was given to Noah. Not to fall backwards, but to trust in God all the way. If you're a meat eater, enjoy your meat without conscience. If you don't eat meat, that's your choice, that's your conscience. God has given us that ability to choose. Don't let it be taken away from you. Stand up and declare that the order God has given is the one that will stand. Whatever is going to happen in the future, we don't know. Remember too, when Jesus came back to the disciples after the resurrection, he was still eating meat. He ate a piece of fish, and he ate it with joy with his disciples. Have a blessed day.